us today. We've got women joining us from all over British Columbia. And this is an exciting webinar in our Strength in Numbers series, setting the stage, new rules of Zoom engagement. Because if you're anything like the staff and my colleagues and people that I know and family members, we're spending quite a bit of time in front of Zoom. And we've got someone to introduce you to today that's going to give us some terrific tips on how to manage Zoom engagement. So stay tuned as we work through this next hour together. Next slide, please. And we've got Caitlin in the background from Women's Enterprise Center, who's managing all our slides and our questions and answers today. My name's Dawn McCooey. I'm a business advisor. I have two hats. I'm a business advisor and I'm an entrepreneur in residence. And I tell people now that I really am an entrepreneur in residence right now. So welcome to our webinar. And our next slide. So if you're new to these Zoom webinars, there is a question and answer and chat features. Easiest if you just click on the chat, and at the very bottom, if you scroll your mouse down, you'll see a little chat box. You can click on that and you can communicate with the panelists, or ask questions, or if you have a comment, something you'd like to say, by all means, just put it right in there and Caitlin's going to manage that. Okay, and our next slide, I get to introduce our panelists. And I want to tell you that I'm delighted to do this. Pauline Stevenson is the president and CEO of Excel Career College on Vancouver Island. She started this in 1989. Pauline is dedicated to changing people's lives by offering hands-on training with a career focus. I couldn't keep track of all of the awards that Pauline's won, but has won over the years. But even most recently, the Royal Bank of Canada's Canadian Women Entrepreneur of the Year. She's been nominated and she's won awards with Small Business BC for Best Company in BC. She is a mentor with Women's Enterprise Center. She's done our Taking the Stage program, and also is an entrepreneur in residence. Are you not an entrepreneur in residence right now, Pauline? We are delighted to have you, Pauline, and I know for our audience today from all over BC to have a chance to ask some questions and learn more about Zoom engagement. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Women's Enterprise Center, a little bit of an update on government support programs, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pauline Stevenson, making connections in a virtual world, after which time there will be an opportunity for you to ask your questions. Okay, next slide. About Women's Enterprise Center. We are empowering women entrepreneurs throughout BC. We help women business owners to realize their business potential through business loans up to $150,000, through professional advice and resources, through skills training such as these webinars, through our mentoring programs, and right now, during this difficult time, through a supportive community. We created these webinars to help you to feel connected to your entrepreneurial community through our Strength in Numbers webinars. So thank you for joining us. We want you to feel a part of our supportive community. The ways that we can support you right now is for our existing loans clients, we were able to provide interest-free concessions for 3 months, as well as deferred loan payments for 3 months. We have set up a separate part of our website specifically with updates on COVID-19 resources, both personal as well as business. We've been doing a lot, as I mentioned, a lot of online training and turning our mentoring programs into creating virtual teams for our mentoring groups and virtual connections for our one-on-one mentoring programs as well. But on our website, you will see COVID-19. And in there, you'll be able to connect directly to programs and supports. I'm going to talk about a few of them. And next slide. So in terms of the tips and resources, we're wanting to be consistent in our message, strength in numbers and helping you to connect. We have recordings available at that part of our website, wec.ca COVID-19, of a number of specific business topics. Today's session will also be available. But what we want you to know is that it's important during a time like this to focus on what it is that you can control. As human beings, sometimes we get lost in overwhelm and in times of enormous change. And the way to be able to manage that is to really take some focus on those things that you can control. We've got some great stories on our website and from previous sessions of amazing things that businesses have done, to be able to control what is generally deemed as a difficult time. We want you to follow public health authorities. That's going to be particularly important as you're getting ready to reopen. And we're having a webinar coming up on that as well. Very, very important. Number 3 is manage your cash flow, especially the outflows. Managing your cash flow will help you move away from guessing what's happening financially in your business and giving you some real data to help you to understand what you can and cannot do moving forward. And especially with those cash outflows, paying attention. We want you to practice your negotiation skills. And yes, we do have webinars available to you on that you can download free of charge. Asking for what you want. As a woman in business, you may be asking suppliers for an extension on payments. You may be negotiating with your landlord. You may be changing the terms of reference on the contracts with your staff. But we want you to practice those negotiation skills and ask for what it is that you need. We want you to build resilience through innovation. Innovation is connected to that resiliency and looking at how else could I do this? Who else might need my product or service? How else could I deliver it? What's another potential audience that I might not have thought about for finding new customers? We want you to build that resilience through innovation. And most importantly is to create action plans, to be able to look at what needs to be done to be able to move forward tomorrow. At some point, this will be over. Nobody knows when. That's one of the pieces we cannot control. But you can create an action plan to help you with that resiliency so that you're ready to be open. And as I've introduced the president and CEO of Excel Career College, Pauline Stevenson, I'm going to turn this next section over to Pauline, and she's got some great tips and resources for you. Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, Dawn. All right. Are we good to get started? Why is it important to embrace this digital communication and this new Zoom world? If you're like me, you've spent your business career building your teams, building your culture, communicating, selling your products. And most of us have been doing that in a live setting. So how do we convert that communication into a digital world? All of us have probably been on Zoom since March, much more than we've ever been in our lives. So today I'm going to encourage you to give the same attention to your digital presence as you would to choosing your business location, decorating your space, choosing your business attire, building your brand, and maintaining professional relationships. The COVID pandemic has changed the way we operate our businesses, and that happened overnight. For most of us, going to the office, talking to our teams, having our customers walk in, halted in March. Most of us have been exploring every possibility of how to keep our business alive and how we can flourish moving forward. How can we pivot? How and what we do? How can we be viable in this new normal and the future normal? How can we plan to thrive in the next new normal? For me, I had to reach an acceptance first. Before I could get creative, I had to accept where we were. And I know my sister's on here and she would attest that I have a stubborn streak. So acceptance isn't always easy. And it wasn't for me. I wanted to just dig my heels in, hit the pause button, and wait for the old normal to come back. However, like Maya Angelou says, if you can't change it, change your attitude. There's no way the old normal is going to come back. I'm a people person, not a digital person. So how am I going to change? So that acceptance piece, and Dawn said it so good during the introduction, what can we control? So accepting that I may be a people person, and to connect with my people, I'm going to have to adapt. Those included getting better at being a digital person. The old normal is not coming back. With change, even unwelcoming, devastating change, we learn, grow, and adapt. So we can't go back to the old normal. How can we start planning from today, not an altered facsimile of what we've always done? I had to accept that I needed to lead first and like it second. And what I mean by that is to keep my team moving forward, I had to demonstrate that I was adapting with positivity. That for them to show up, I needed to embrace what our existing situation was. And if you've ever heard the phrase, fake it till you make it, it was very true. I remember the first Zoom staff meeting, I had to give myself a talking to because I want the people to be around me. I want to connect with them. I want to feel their energy. And showing up positively on that Zoom meeting made such a difference. And my staff have been coming back for those Zoom meetings every week. Just to give you a bit of a background, over the past 35 years, I've been building my business life. And a big part of that has been developing communication, leadership, and professionalism skills. In fact, I'm pretty confident about my people skills in a live setting. So I was a Toastmaster, and in fact, in February, I started my own speaking club to continue developing my communication skills and also to share my passion. And much of the impetus to starting that club was from the Taking the Stage program that the Women's Enterprise Center offers. And so just a moment of segue, that Taking the Stage program is so good. That group wanted to continue meeting. So a way that I could do that was just to start a speaking club. And that got started in February and was gaining a lot of traction. If we look at these effective presentations, 55% being body language, 38% tone of voice, 7% actual words. So what that tells us is that how we say what we're saying is more important than what we actually say. And this has been argued over the years about what the percentage breakdown actually is, but the fact remains that this is why there are so many Toastmasters around the world and why we are always looking to improve our communication skills. Now, how do we adapt that to a digital setting? In March, we could no longer meet live. So I put it out to my group and asked them, do you want to try this in a digital format? And certainly some said, no, that doesn't interest me. But there were enough of the members who said, yeah, that will be actually really helpful right now because I'm finding myself communicating in a Zoom platform way more than I used to. So yeah, I'd like to continue. What was really interesting and unexpected was that now, because it wasn't live, we were able to open it up to anybody who has a computer and a willingness to come on board. So we've actually gained new members, mainly because it is in a digital format and that it's relevant and current to where they are today. So what we looked at is when we're evaluating and when we're practicing, how could we convert to digital? So eye contact when you're live with an audience, you're trying to look at each member of the audience so that they feel included and connected with you. When you're on a digital format, to actually have the audience feel like you're speaking to them, you need to look at a camera. So, and that, I'll tell you, is the hardest part for me, is focusing not on the people who might be on your screen, but actually focusing on the camera. Our gestures, this is really interesting. Our gestures are so important to a presentation in a live format. And yet, if we do gestures that were normally very appropriate, they're lost in this new Zoom setting. So we actually have to lift our hands up higher and get our gestures closer to our body, if at all possible. And for me, it wasn't a natural transition. It has taken practice. And every week I'm working on those skills to improve how I'm allowing my audience to follow along with me. In a live setting, it's really important to vary voice inflection. In an on-screen, that's just as important. In fact, it may be even more important because looking at a screen is so one-dimensional that to create an illusion of more of a face-to-face, we want to make sure that we have voice inflection and gestures and that we're drawing the audience in. Dress to impress. I'm sure all of you have been on Zoom meetings where the dress code has changed dramatically from what it would be in your office. And that's all well and good. That's, in fact, quite fun. However, if you're facilitating, it sends a message to your audience if you dress the way you would in a live setting. It's not for me to dress up, it's I want you to be able to have trust that I'm in a leadership position. So in order to create that trust, I need to show you that I'm still the same person. In a live setting, what we would practice in our Speak to Lead group would be to stand like a leader, take that leadership stance, hold our ground, take up the right amount of space. In a digital setting, we're usually seated, and that becomes, for me, it was like pulling back the reins. It was harder for me to connect in a seated position. I like connecting with my audience in a moving, fluid way. So ensuring your posture is really, really important. Pausing when you're live is really important, and we have adopted ways of making sure that we replace ums and ahs with actual relevant pauses. And that takes time, and that's practice. Well, I've spent my life practicing that. And as an interesting side note, I don't know if any of you have been watching Justin Trudeau, but if we could do a live update from where his presentations have gone from the beginning of his role to how he presents today, it's incredible how he's eliminated so many of his redundant words and his ums and ahs. So he's been practicing. Now, how do we convert that to a digital setting? We still need to be comfortable with silences. So if you're asking your audience to consider something, or you're presenting an idea that you want them to get on board with, we still need to give them the time to consider it and to practice. Oh, sorry, for us to practice letting them catch up. So if I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, like, how many of us like our on-screen presence as opposed to our live presence? I want you to have the time to think about that. So, choosing the right environment. This is really, really fun. Getting the camera at the correct height. So I can't see myself right now. I don't know, I'm hoping that you can all see me, but I can't see myself. What we're looking for when we're choosing where our camera is we want our camera to be just above our eye level, so that when we're looking at the camera, our eyes are at a level that would be similar to if we were face to face. Let me demonstrate for a second what it looks like if the camera is too low. And again, like I said, I can't see this. So
move it down a little bit if you want, Pauline. You're right
okay.
on square right now. There you go.
Okay.
There's right, yeah.
Now watch what happens if I put it down here and I'm talking to you. Not very good, right? So
your chin.
exactly. And all of a sudden my wrinkles, I just show right up and get highlighted. So we don't want the camera down there. We also don't want the camera up here, because that gives the audience, it's really hard to concentrate. I've found that in some presentations, I've seen some people and it looks to me like they're on the ceiling. So you want to practice getting your camera at the right space. Then you want to light your space and your face. So again, watch what happens when I have a little light on top of my manufactured Zoom box that I'll show you in a second. But watch what happens when I turn my light off. And then I'm going to turn it back on. And to me, when I'm practicing, that makes an awful lot of difference in how I'm able to show up on the screen. Find the best backdrop you can. And there are a lot of things that you can do. I've got the Women's Enterprise Center banner here just to make it feel more like an office as opposed to in the home. However, there's an acceptance and also an appreciation for the fact that we're working from home. So we don't need to deny that, but we want our audience to get the best experience from what we're presenting that we possibly can. So kind of look at where your camera is pointed to, put all your mess underneath the camera, behind the camera, or over on the sides, and create as much of a clear, non-distracting background as you possibly can. Let's talk about these gestures again. When Bill Clinton was running for his presidency, he had really wide, wild gestures. And so his coaches were teaching him to rein it in. And they actually coined the phrase, the Clinton box. And it was this range of the body, try and keep his hands in the Clinton box. Well, now the Clinton box doesn't really work, because if my hands are down here, it actually looks very distracting and awkward. So I'd like to coin the phrase that we have a new Zoom box for our gestures, and it's tabletop and up. And also, if your hands come too forward, that looks weird. Like my hands get too big, right? So you want to keep them fairly close to where you're talking. Again, looking at the camera. This is challenging. It's going to take me a long time to actually say I'm comfortable with it. One suggestion I've read is that you can post a sticky note with some eyes on it right by your camera, so that you're always remembering to come back to that spot. Remember you are on camera. And this is particularly true when you're the listener, but you're still part of the Zoom diagram where you're in your little box. Think about what your resting, listening, considering face looks like at all times. Remember, you're on camera. So this is going to send a message to the speaker that may not be communicating how you actually feel. I saw a participant have the biggest yawn you could ever imagine on the camera. Yawns are catchy, so the speaker is going to have a really hard time not yawning as well if they saw it. But what's one of the benefits and the bonuses of being on camera is you can just duck out for a second and come back in. So remember that you're on camera, and I'd encourage you to try and promote positivity by giving some gestures and some feedback to whoever is presenting whenever possible. Ideally, the presenter is looking at the camera, but they're going to glance at the audience, at the people who are on the meeting with them. So remember that you're on that as a participant, you want to support the speaker as well. Make your meetings shorter. This is across the board. We can do longer face-to-face than we can on the screen. My opinion is that when we're live, in a live setting, we gain the energy from one another. We get momentum, and that supports a longer time frame. When we're on Zoom, we've heard that the phrase Zoom fatigue, and it's not only during the meeting, it's when you're given the next invitation to a Zoom meeting. You want to keep them as short as possible so that we can keep the energy up. So I always like learning from others, and during this particular learning period, we're all, or most of us, are in the same boat. We're all going through this at the same time, which has some comforting aspects to it. We're more patient with one another because we know we're going through this learning curve. So I reached out and asked some people that have had dramatic changes since the COVID crisis hit. Diane Hawkins, who's the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce here, we worked together for 10 years, so I happen to know firsthand that she is an excellent presenter and is a live presenter, very similar to how I am, that we get a lot from working with an audience. She has been on Zoom almost all day, every day since the March date when things were shut down. She finds it very challenging, and some of the reasons that she's finding it really challenging herself is it's difficult to engage with the audience and get a sense of how your audience is doing. I can 100% agree with Diane's challenges there. What she's doing to keep her energy up and still have that presence of being a leader is she has a standing desk. So when she's facilitating, she stands up for presenting. And I think that's great advice. I really wanted to try it out, but I just didn't have time to come up with a system that would allow me to stand up. Then I asked Ron Schmidt, who happens to be my husband, who was not a Zoom guy at all, and now is on Zoom all day, every day. And he said, he echoes some of the points that we've already covered, that brief is really important, that his clients or his staff have less of an attention span in a digital format than they did live. He believes that you should show up how you would live, on time and dressed for the occasion. He has a dedicated space and Zoom environment that we've worked on. And what we found by practicing with his setup is that he did not have an adequate camera on his device. So he's had to actually upgrade his camera to make sure that he's presenting in the way that he would, that showcases him in the best possible way. He feels it's really important to start every meeting with patience, because although he's practicing and he's doing this every day, it could be that client's very first time of ever being on a Zoom call. So patience is really important. His next piece of advice, don't over Zoom. If you can do a follow-up phone call, and if that would suffice, don't send out a Zoom invitation. Remember that Zoom isn't the only way to communicate right now. So I thought those were really good pieces of advice. And now I'd like to do some do's and don'ts. In summary, let's recap. So small notes near the camera. These are my speaking notes, and they fit just nicely under the camera. And that helps me focus on talking to the camera. If appropriate for your message, smile. And that's come up at our speaking group. When the presenter smiles, even through the digital wires, the audience smiles as well. Pause after a question or a joke. Let your audience be with you, thinking with you. Practice in a fake Zoom meeting. And what I mean by that is start a Zoom meeting by yourself. You're the only one there. And take your device around and find the right setup for you. Remember, you want your lighting in front of you and you want your camera right about eye level. Put a sticky note near your camera with eyes drawn on it if you don't have your notes by the camera. And pay attention to that resting face as a listener. Remember, communicating is both the speaking, the listening, and how the message gets absorbed. So when you're the listener, be a kind one. Give the speaker as much positive feedback as you possibly can. Let's cover some of the don'ts. Don't be too far away. It's really hard to connect with the speaker if they are fading into the background. You don't want to be so close that your face gets distorted. That's not good. Poor sound quality. I listened to a coach talking about doing presentations, and in his opinion, the sound quality was the most important element to a good presentation in a digital setting. So check your sound quality. Shuffling your papers. I'm going to give you an example of what this sounds like. So if your device is on your desktop and your notes are on paper, listen to what it sounds like when you start moving the papers around. It really takes a lot away from your presentation. Don't forget you're on camera. I don't think that can be said enough. The guy who went viral because he had underwear on, full business attire up top, but underwear on the bottom. Remember, when you're getting up, you're on camera. So, and there are some benefits to this one-dimensional setting. I could wear my hair up because it took 4 clips, which I never do in live setting, but you're not going to see the back of my head. So have some fun with being on camera. Don't forget you're on camera. So in conclusion, we were able to pivot the Speak to Lead group quite quickly and find relevance and practical learning. So I had to look at how this was going to impact how I pivot my business. And for me, stubborn Pauline, I knew that other people may pivot faster than me. So during a Zoom staff meeting, I put it out to my staff. I said, think about think about all the resources that we do have at Excel. Think about the people, the brain trust, the intellectual property, the experience, the connections. And if you were to think about those without considering what we've done in the past, what could we do to help people? What could we do? What service could we provide that is relevant today and relevant in the soon-to-be new normal in the future? I explained to the staff that I've been doing Excel the way I've been doing Excel for the past 31 years. So pivoting is really challenging. We get locked in our ways, and more so over time. It turned out that asking them to consider this was not only creative, because some great ideas have come from it. I highly encourage you to get people involved. So great creativity, but that culture of doing something together, of working together. I was reminded that we still need to do that. It may look really different, but it's still really, really important. As an analogy, think about if you had dinner plans and your idea was that you were going to serve a beautiful roast beef dinner, but you missed the butcher shop. You never got the beef. So would you have your people over, not serve them anything, and say, I sure wish we had some roast beef? No, you'd adapt. You'd look at what you had currently, what you had available to you, and you'd put that into some great creation. Maybe you're serving them the best pasta primavera that they've ever had. So when we're looking and we're using that word pivot, it's so important to look at what you have today and try your hardest to think about how that applies to this new normal and this future new normal. And if, like me, acceptance gets us there much faster than wishing it were different. Back to that Maya Angelou quote, if you can't change it, change your attitude. Thank you very much. I'm hoping that somebody has some questions.
Yeah, I've got some questions here that have just come in. Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay, so this person asked if you're inexperienced or you might have home interruptions, is it better to acknowledge that at the beginning or should you try to power through?
I think very much like a live setting, absolutely state what your situation is right now. The other thing you can do is have a practice with your friends. That works really well. I'm in my living room today and I'm usually tucked in my bedroom. So I've been extremely worried that a teenager may come through with all his flair, and I've been looking at the time, and I've warned him that I'm live in the living room. So we have to have some patience for one another. But yes, put it out there that you're homeschooling right now and that you're working in your home office trying to set up the best possible setting that you can for yourself. Oh, and I'm hoping, Dawn, can I just take a moment to show the audience what I'm doing for my setup?
Absolutely, yes.
So I'm hoping you can see this. This is my very, very beautiful, what I call my Zoom box. And what it is it's the lining from a HelloFresh box with a board stuck in the middle and a light attached to the top. And then my device goes right on that ledge there that has been stuffed in the side of the cardboard. So you can get creative and find a setup that gives you the confidence to present in your most professional way in a digital setting. Set your stage.
I love that, Pauline. You talked about the Zoom box being, sort of here, and you've got a virtual and a real one.
Exactly.
Great.
There's another question from Michelle. She's asking, if you are out for a walk and realize you have to join a Zoom meeting, do you find it better to stop and take part, or is it acceptable to walk and talk?
Michelle, I really like that question. I find it really distracting when somebody is walking and the camera's moving. It's almost always a bad angle that the person who's walking holds the phone at as well. And it typically, the connection doesn't seem to work as well. So technically, I think it's a bad choice. If you possibly can, stop and take your Zoom call. Do we have any more questions?
There's just a fun one, I think, from Chloe. She says, how do you stay so awesome, Pauline?
Chloe was in my Taking the Stage group, And one of the reasons why Speak to Lead evolved, I didn't want to let her go. So I surround myself with wonderful people like you.
Great question, great answer. Pauline, I really liked your comment when you talked about lead first, like it second. You know, that, you know, it's just the epitome of leadership. You know, you were talking about learning along with your team and embracing, not necessarily embracing technology in the digital world, but, you know, leading into it, learning it along the way, and then maybe even learning to like it, you know, and create that, you know, innovation from your own Zoom box to new programs that you're designing.
Absolutely. And if I can just elaborate on that a tiny bit, lead first, like it second. I do think that's what we've done as leaders all the way along, whether it be digital or live. Mm-hmm. That setting the stage, I think Simon Sinek might be the one that says, good managers eat last. Does anybody know? I may have, let's not put that in writing anywhere. But what it means is, as a leader, we really want to be audience centric. So if we're thinking about what our team needs, then we're going to give them what we want them to get to. So we're going to model how we want it to look. Even if it's digging deep, or even if you're not really there yet, you need to put on that performance. And when your team comes on board and they start adopting it, that feeds you. But first, we got to do it.
Well, Kouzes and Posner talk about that as modeling the way, as a leader, modeling the way for your followers.
And you don't have to like it. Right? It's not about doing only what we like, because if I waited to do it the way I want to, I'd be waiting for the old normal to come back. Right? Digging my heels and wait.
We have a couple more questions that have come in.
Okay.
So one is, do you have any other tips for follow-up after a meeting on Zoom?
Very much like a live setting. In fact, I think you can have a little bit more creativity in today's situation than even prior to this, is follow up the normal way, either with a phone call, email, whatever you would do in a live setting. But something I've promoted for years and years and years is follow up with something in the mail, a thank you card. If you want the person to really remember you, put something in the mail. And the reason for that is because it's rare. So now we might have the opportunity to say, I want to send you some correspondence, but I'm sure you're getting your mail at home. Are you still getting your business mail? And that may give you a point of contact to be able to send them something to their home address directly from you. They get out of their mailbox themselves. So I think we have an opportunity to use it to our advantage to a certain extent. And the reason I say put something in the mail is because over the past, oh gosh, I'm going to say 31 years, I have had probably 20 handwritten cards, maybe more, but not a whole lot of handwritten cards. Every single one, 100% of those cards made their way to my desk, and I didn't have the heart to ever throw them away. So when they were done on my desk, they're in a desk drawer. And I do look at them years and years later. So with that kind of power to put things in a person's hands, I still promote it highly.
Great.
That answer the question, by the way?
I think it did.
Okay.
So another one is, how do you avoid Zoom exhaustion?
That's a really good question. And I don't think there's a solid answer yet. What I've been doing is I've been picking and choosing. I look at what it is that I have on my current plan. So whether it's about learning, or whether it's about building or launching a new service or product, and only the Zoom meetings that are relevant to that are the ones that I'm going to sign up for. I'm going to avoid taking Zoom just because it sounds good and I'm probably going to like it. It adds to that exhaustion. So I think it's really, really important to recognize that Zoom exhaustion is a thing. So choose wisely. I'm really grateful that you're all here today and chose this session to attend, but choose wisely. Make sure it's going to be relevant to you right now. If you're needing to get business advice, look at the WEC, the Women's Enterprise Center website. The content has been almost instant. When there's a new product put out by the government or a new support, the Women's Enterprise Center is on it right away. So change your mentality from responding to all of the information that you're getting, that overload of content, to seek what you need. That's been a real great shift for me. I've really appreciated that balance and choosing to not participate in everything, but always come to these.
Yeah.
I'd like to add something to that, Pauline. In our senior leaders at Women's Enterprise Center have been listening. They've been listening to our clients, what it is that you are wanting and needing, and are on weekly calls with government. So, you know, the messages are being taken forward, your concerns and questions. And just today, that's hot off the press, as Pauline said, we're on top of it. New measures for the Canada Emergency Business Assistance. Sole proprietors who were falling through the cracks up until today were not able to access these loans programs. So the criteria has shifted as of today. So stay tuned. If you didn't qualify for something 2 weeks ago, it may be that your business qualifies today. So the changes and the parameters of those programs are constantly changing, and new announcements were made just today. So I'm just really proud to be part of an organization where our senior leaders are in those calls and relaying your concerns up to the federal government.
Mm-hmm. And if I can echo something that you just said, Dawn, you've been listening, and all of the team at Women's Enterprise Center has been listening to the clients and the people who have been writing in and phoning in. And Women's Enterprise Center, I was on a call where the discussion was about how to stay positive, because right now what people need is to be heard, and it can be you're listening to everybody's biggest problems, and thank goodness that there's that sounding board. But I have just the utmost respect for this team who's able to come out every single day with positivity to support one another in this time. So kudos to you guys.
And we couldn't do it without people like you, Pauline. So we're delighted to be having these sessions. and to host what it is that our audience is looking for. This is an important topic. I think you have covered some key points, some things that people can take away, practical skills, things that you can practice. I know I'm sure looking at the camera a lot more and remembering to smile and use my hands. I've learned a lot today. I do want to put out a huge thank you to you, to Caitlin, who's been managing behind the scenes. I think we might not have got to all of our questions. Have we got time for one more question, Caitlin, if you've got one there?
Yes, I've got one more. So it just, if you're not familiar with PowerPoint presentations, etc., is it professional enough to just show your products live instead, or simply just talk about it?
Super great question. If you're going to do a PowerPoint or you're going to share your screen, it's more important than ever that it has minimal content. If you're sharing your screen and it has too many words, you're going to lose the impact altogether. About your question about if you're not that familiar with PowerPoint, I think you're going to be better off doing live until you have that confidence. Otherwise you're going to lose some confidence in doing that presentation. And also we have to recognize that technology fails. So being prepared to do it without PowerPoint is super important. And if you get down how your sales pitch is going to go without PowerPoint, then it's easy to add some slides later down the road. And think less is more when it comes to PowerPoint. Go into the template file, find 4 or 5 slides that you can adapt to meet your needs, and stick with that. Don't think that PowerPoint is going to be your presentation. PowerPoint is meant to give you support. I'm hoping that helps you.
Great tips. And just a note, thank you so much, Pauline, once again, and Caitlin in the background, managing us here with questions and slides. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Have some upcoming webinars. You can register. These are free of charge. Women's Enterprise Center.ca Mentor Advisory Forums, MAF. We've got one called Growth Opportunities for Indigenous Businesses. And we have another one on social media. We've had a few of these and they're popular, and some important tips here on managing social media for your business. Remember as well that the past COVID-19 Strength in Numbers webinars, such as the one we're doing today, those are available on our website. If you missed them the first time around, there's some important topics there, some great information for you. Thank you all, and thank you all for your thank yous. I think, if Pauline, everyone was listening and just really acknowledging. There's so many lovely thank yous coming in from our audience today. Gratitude, it's a wonderful thing. Thank you. Have a great and safe day. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists, and have a terrific rest of your week.
Bye, Dawn.
Bye now. Thank you.